Folks, my name is Jason Batchelder, and I am the Commissioner of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I have to include how lucky I feel today to be in these shoes. The Commissioner of the Day doesn't always get to do something so monumental. I'm from Elmore, Vermont, and thank you all for choosing to spend this day with us as we celebrate the restoration of Vermont's treasured wild turkey. I'm also joined by Governor Scott. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. The Lieutenant Governor, Don Rogers, and my boss, Julie Moore, Agency Secretary, many other dignitaries who I will mention. Now, restoration attempts don't always go as planned. While Vermont has had a great success with peregrine falcons, loons, bald eagles, and others, you can look around the country and see attempts that have not succeeded. Red wolves, woodland caribou, and even turkey restoration did not always go as planned. But before we can criticize, we must walk a mile in their shoes, as we say. I especially like this tactic because when I eventually do criticize, I'm over a mile away and I have their shoes. As you can see, this event has drawn some extraordinary folks. Those that I have mentioned, and if you can believe it, Mr. John Hathaway, the man who bagged the very first turkey here of the 23 that were taken in that historic 12-day hunting season in 1973. We also have Mr. Donald Gaudet, who took the first turkey in the third season. If you gents want to raise your hands, I'm sure folks would like to meet you afterwards. Thank you so much. I'd like to begin with a series of thank yous, and to do that, I'm going to forget some people. Feel free to find me afterwards. I apologize in advance, it's just going to happen. I'd like first to acknowledge that we are celebrating this event in West Pawlet, a site that's very close to the first releases of the turkeys back in 1969. Our marker, which we will unveil later, sits on the V-Trans rail trail. And an enormous thanks goes out to them, especially Mr. Bill Gray, who's here today, and Secretary Flynn, who makes it all happen and is a friend of most of us here. Rose Smith from the Pawlet Select Board, and Vermont State Representative Chris Pritchard. I'm glad I'm not the only one who feels that way about both of them. We're the movers and the shakers locally here, and I'll have a special thanks for them later. I'd like to acknowledge with great appreciation the private landowners and the farmers who welcomed this project during the first releases. The Malcolms from just up the road for one, and the late State Representative Robert Graff, whose land in North Rupert was, according to local knowledge there, another site of one of the releases. I'd also like to acknowledge Bill Drake, who was Vermont's turkey biologist when the wild turkey restoration began. In 1969, John Hall helped Bill stock our first turkeys near Pawlet. On February 28th, 2 toms, and March 4th, 5 hens. Bill trap netted the wild turkeys in southwestern New York and released a total of 31 near Pawlet and Castleton in 1969 and 1970. John Hall works for us to this day. And while he couldn't be here because he's taking care of his wife, he is a treasured member of our outreach team and responsible for the photos of the birds you see on your invitations. I'd like to acknowledge our staff, and right up front, Tony McCula, who is our turkey project leader, and not only did most of the heavy lifting here on our side, but during the lead up to this event had to bear the brunt of a new commissioner and put up with 1,000 changes to the plan. So thank you, Tony. If the turkey flock goes south over the next few years, she also gets it too. So, also staff current and past who made this effort a success, including those present. Jeffrey Wallen, former wildlife biologist with the department, who was involved in the original reintroduction. Doug Blodgett and Scott Darling, both retired wildlife biologists, who oversaw the project at various times, David Sawsbill, Tony's boss, and a respected wildlife biologist himself. Colonel Stedman, his wardens, and the Division of Warden Service, past and present, for the years of dedicated support to protecting our wild turkey population. And also Mark Scott, while not present, a respected wildlife biologist, a remarkable turkey hunter, and our most recent past director of wildlife, and his replacement, John Austin, who wishes he could be here. He's our current wildlife director and sends his regards. I would like to acknowledge the support of Tom Decker from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Office of Conservation Aid and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a whole, who facilitated the acquisition of our marker through the NSSF, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, and Mr. John McNamara, who you'll hear from in a bit. I'd like to acknowledge the firearms, archery, and ammunition manufacturers for their funding support for wildlife conservation projects like this, especially our wild turkey program. You may not know this, because we hunters like to take all the credit, but 76% of federal funding benefiting conservation comes from excise taxes on guns and archery equipment and ammunition. Shooters, right? So thank you so much. But hunters deserve extraordinary credit for the biological data they provide. They are the eyes and ears on the landscape, and the support to the hunting effort here at home and worldwide is incalculable. I'm getting there. I'd like to acknowledge the National Wild Turkey Federation and our Vermont chapter president, Mr. Brett Ledoux, and many other partner conservation organizations that enable our wildlife conservation successes. While our department does outstanding work, our success is entirely related to the commitment of many partners working together. And lastly, I'd like to acknowledge the Fish and Wildlife Board. There are many here, some past, some present, and their dedication to ensuring effective and enjoyable hunting seasons. This citizen legislature, appointed by the governor, sets seasons, methods, and limits with which the department manages the flock, and we couldn't do it without them. I've got a couple of pieces of paper here I got to shuffle through. Anybody have any sunscreen they want to lend me? I'm actually okay. It's only April sun. I've got a list of folks who I'll be very proud to introduce. The next is my boss, Secretary Julie Moore, who's going to say a few words. Julie's responsible for me being here, and I owe her a debt of gratitude for allowing me to be the commissioner of the day. She's a huge supporter of Fish and Wildlife, and I'll turn it over to her.
So good afternoon, everyone. It is really lovely to be here today, and it couldn't be nicer. Thrilled for the opportunity to be part of a celebration dedicating a conservation marker, but also a celebration of one of Vermont's great wildlife success stories, the restoration of the wild turkey. And this is a story really worth telling. Back in 1968, the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department began identifying the places that might best support these birds, including right here in Pawlet. By the spring of 1973, just a handful of years later, that work had paid off. The population of Vermont's wild turkeys had grown from those original few dozen birds to an estimated 500 or 600. And department biologists have kept at it, monitoring, translocating birds to new parts of the state, and working alongside hunters and volunteers to protect, restore, and manage prime habitat. By the 1980s, Vermont had so many turkeys, we were actually able to share birds with other states and help get their programs off the ground, which is a pretty amazing accomplishment. Today we have an estimated 45,000 wild turkeys calling Vermont home, which is a pretty remarkable number. Vermont's wild turkey population is now on par with the population of Vermont's largest city, Burlington. And I'm sure there's a joke there. But here's the thing, behind those 45,000 birds are as many, if not more, landowners who made a choice to manage their land thoughtfully, to be good neighbors to wildlife, and to be a steward of this place we're all lucky enough to call home. And so my thanks to all of you for your role in this success. The wild turkey's return isn't just a biology story, it's a Vermont story. It's these thousands of quiet individual acts of stewardship, repeated season after season across every corner of the state. No single person, department, or agency made this happen. You all did. Of course, the work doesn't stop here. Habitat protection and management remain the foundation of healthy wildlife populations. Climate change, invasive species, new diseases, and fragmented landscapes are real pressures on Vermont's wildlife, and meeting them will require the same spirit of public participation and private commitment that brought the turkey back. We need landowners, hunters, volunteers, and partners watching, reporting, and continuing to work alongside us. This marker will stand as a reminder of what this sort of collaboration can achieve. And now it's my real pleasure to introduce my boss, Governor Phil Scott. The governor has been a steadfast champion of the public-private conservation model that makes Vermont, Vermont. Since January 2017, when the governor took office, he's supported the voluntary conservation of nearly 32,000 additional acres in Vermont, protected in fee or with easements, and while never losing sight of the role private landowners play in keeping Vermont's landscape whole. So he's a partner in this work in the truest sense of the word. Please join me in welcoming the governor.
Thank you, Julie, and thanks for everyone for being here today. It's really great to be in this region to mark this important site, reflect on how we got here, and maybe talk a little turkey. Now, I've used that term a lot over my life, but I thought I'd better look it up to see what it really means so I don't get myself into trouble. And this is what Google says. Google says that to talk turkey is to stop speaking in useless, unfair, or buzzard terms, and to start talking truthfully. Now, after spending a week in the State House, I have a renewed appreciation for the term. That being said, I do want to say publicly how fortunate you are to have a Rutland delegation looking out for you in the State House. Many of them are here today, and if you could just raise your hand so everyone can see you, we thank you so much for your service. Thank you. So with this new term that I learned, they talk turkey every single day in the State House. And in my opinion, we need a few more of them in the building. Chris Pritchard is a part of that group. Very much appreciated. And I want to thank him for helping to put this event together and bringing, it appears, half your family. How about the family members here of Chris Pritchard? Family and friends, how about raising your hands? There you go. You know, I've lived in Vermont all my life. I was born and raised in Barrie, now live in Berlin. So I didn't go far, at least geographically. Admittedly, though, there are times when I find myself taking for granted how lucky we are to live here in Vermont. Like, it's true. You know, we complain a lot about Vermont and maybe the taxes and so forth, but there's no place I'd rather live, no place I intend to live than Vermont. Like many of you, I spent a lot of my youth in the woods, hunting, fishing, and exploring. And unfortunately, these days, I don't get to spend anywhere near the time I used to enjoying the outdoors. But when I do, it's incredible to see the results of conservation successes and all the wildlife I didn't see in my youth, but can now see within a quarter mile of my home, and most of the time, right in my backyard. Loon, bear, coyote, Canadian geese, moose, osprey, bald eagles, snapping turtles, and of course, turkeys. It's truly remarkable that just over the last 50 years or so, we've been able to increase the population and health of our wildlife through efforts like the one we celebrate today. When I was a kid, the only turkeys we saw were around Thanksgiving at the local grocery store. And now we're at a point where we see them all across the state. I know there are some who think the Department of Fish and Wildlife exists only to issue hunting and fishing licenses, but there's so much more than that. They're rooted in science, on a mission to protect our land, our wildlife, and our way of life. And for that, they deserve our thanks. But I also want to reflect on a common theme we've already heard a couple times today. I want to thank the landowners in particular for being excellent stewards of the environment and for allowing us to access their property, to hike, to hunt, bike, snowshoe, snowmobile, and fish. Without their support, Vermont wouldn't be what it is today, and we wouldn't have nearly the options for recreation we do. So it's really, really important for us to let them know how much we appreciate their generosity. So let's continue to support all this work together, because we all have a role to play. So thanks again for having me, but also for doing this amazing work. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Governor Scott. I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Governor John Rogers.
Thank you, Jason, and I really want to thank Chris. It's been a wonderful day down here. We went up to the Keogh Conservation Camp, and there must have been 70 or 80 kids there doing turkey calls, and I told those kids I hadn't seen that many turkeys since I got out of the State House on Friday. But it's so great to see young people that are interested in being out in nature, because I think that's part of the problem with humanity today is a whole bunch of folks don't get out in nature enough. This turkey story is so unbelievable. You know, you guys were hunting them down here, and we still didn't have any up in the Northeast Kingdom where I live. And I remember I saw my first one back in the 90s, and when I saw it, having never seen a turkey in the wild, I was like blown away, but then it didn't fly. It took off running and covered like 100 yards in 2 seconds and was gone, and it left me thinking, did I really just see a turkey? It was just so amazing to go from that point in the 90s to now it's the most prevalent game species that I see. I saw one this morning on my way out, and he was probably 150, 200 yards from me. I was taking the dogs out for a walk, and as soon as I opened the door, that thing booked for the woods. It was gone. And so I had all these friends who told me, you know, you should really take up turkey hunting. I never did it. I deer hunted, rabbit hunted. And I said, how hard can it be? I have to stop the car so I don't run the stupid things over. But those of you who hunt know when you step out of the car, game on. The things are so sharp, their eyesight, they catch movement and they're gone. It's amazing. And so I have a group of friends who I met in my work in state government in the State House, one of them being the former Fish and Wildlife Commissioner, one of them is a former Forest Parks and Rec Commissioner, a journalist, a couple lobbyists, and they come up to go turkey hunting with me for a weekend every year. And so far, out of 7 years, I think they've killed 1 turkey. So now I call it Turkey Conservation Weekend. And so what I'm going to do next year is bring them down and have the kids teach them how to call turkeys. But this is a true success. And as a couple other speakers said, so much of the thanks goes to the landowners, the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Without the landowners, you know, we don't have the great hunting and fishing, we don't have the wildlife habitat. And I think a lot of folks in the State House in Montpelier that forget what makes Vermont special is not just the working lands. We hear that word over and over again, working lands, and it's super important. But we don't have working lands if we don't have the people who are working those lands. And if we don't have those people, we're no longer Vermont. And I know so many people who fish and hunt that spend time putting in wildlife food plots. They spend time releasing wild apple trees. They're out helping Fish and Wildlife do the moose surveys and all of those things that make our Fish and Wildlife Department great and make our herds so great. Personally, at home, I keep anywhere from 20 to 40 acres a year, depending on how much time I have. I set aside a huge amount for grassland bird species. I still have bobolinks and woodcocks and field sparrows and all that, and put in a broad section of food for pollinators and wildlife, and it is just amazing. I love to hunt, but more than loving to hunt, I love to see that wildlife. When I got up this morning, there were turkeys out, there were deer out, there were birds all over the place. We live in a really spectacular place, but let's just remember the working lands and the people who work them really are what make this place special. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. A lot of people up here that you can see walk the walk, aren't there? Or strut the walk, maybe. Another one I'm about to introduce, I pegged him as our keynote speaker, but I've assured him he needs to be brief. Representative Chris Pritchard, would you come on up? I've only known Chris for since July, I think, but in that time, I realized why you all love and cherish him so much. So here he is.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I wouldn't let my wife look at this because she says I always make things too long. And I'm going to read it because she says if I don't, I ramble. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I want to thank the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Secretary Moore, Commissioner Batchelder, and his staff at the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. Tom Decker of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, NWTF, NSSF, and other conservation groups, my 4-H shooting sports family, which is over here, the Rutland delegation, and fellow legislators that have joined us to celebrate this historic conservation success story with the people of Pawlet. Thank you all. Many of you had to start your day quite early to be here. On behalf of the town of Pawlet and its people, we are deeply appreciative of all the support you have all shown in honoring us with your presence. Those that know me well will know how fond I am of the wild turkey. Perhaps no one better than my wife, Jean, who has graciously tolerated this obsession for the last 40 years. She has put up with the alarm clock that goes off at 3:30 a.m. nearly every morning during the month of May. And while she has never spent a day in the turkey woods with me, she can tell you every vocalization this bird makes. Gobbles, yelps, clucks, purrs, whines, whistles, kiki runs, fly-down cackles, and every call used to make them. She knows that when I refer to a boat paddle, it's for calling turkeys, not paddling a canoe. Both of us have our favorite days in May. For me, it's May 1st, opening day of the spring turkey season. For her, it's May 31st, the last day of the spring turkey season. The vision that the Vermont Fish and Wildlife had over 50 years ago is arguably one of Vermont's greatest conservation success stories. And while it may sound silly, it has brought immeasurable joy to my life and the lives of many others. This will resonate with many here today who have been truly fortunate enough to find ourselves sitting with our back against a big oak, at a meadow's edge, or on top of a mountain ridge in the complete darkness and near silence. To be a witness to when nature wakes up and the light of a new day slowly overcomes the darkness of the night. We absorb every sound as nature's course begins its new day, all while anxiously awaiting that thunderous gobble that puts an exclamation point on nature's morning opus. This bird has enriched my life immeasurably. It is responsible for connecting me to literally hundreds of people in Vermont, across New England, Virginia, and as far west as Montana. Good folks that have become lifelong friends, most of which I would never have met had it not been for this bird. At the beginning of my term, I attended a fish and wildlife meeting at U32. A couple gentlemen came to the table I was at and sat with me. The one closest to me introduced himself and his Uncle Steve, who would come with him, and we started chatting. And before long, the subject of the wild turkeys came up, and by the end of the night, he and Uncle Steve had offered me an invitation and the privilege of being able to turkey hunt on their property, which I humbly but promptly accepted. I have taken the opportunity several times to set the alarm clock to 3:30 and get a few hours in the woods before I had to be at the State House. We have become good friends. He even started texting me the night before I planned to hunt with a scouting report to let me know if the birds were on his side of the road or Uncle Steve's side on the road. All of this has been made possible because of the extraordinary vision the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department had over 50 years ago in collaboration with the town of Pawlet and the 17 birds they released on the Pawlet landscape. I think their vision was much greater than just restoring this bird to Vermont's landscape, and I have come to realize and truly appreciate what the vision has meant for myself and so many other Vermonters. During my time in the legislature, I've had great pleasure of getting to know and work with the commissioner and many of the dedicated people that care so deeply about Vermont's natural resources and wildlife. They are tasked with a great responsibility, and I am proud to support and advocate for the good and important work they do on behalf of all Vermonters. Several months ago, I was made aware of this project by Rose Smith. Rose had a concern that this project was not aligning with the vision and wishes the town of Pawlet and Historical Society were hoping for. Rose arranged to be put on the select board agenda so this could be discussed with the board. I attended the meeting with Rose, and she presented to the select board her concerns and asked the select board their wishes on behalf of the people of Pawlet. The board discussed this and made a motion, and in a unanimous decision shared their wishes on where they would like this marker to be displayed. The board asked Rose and I to undertake this task on their behalf. Many folks and agencies were involved in this process to achieve the desired outcome we are celebrating today. What was clear from the very start and the very beginning was the desire that the state and federal agencies put forth, their willingness to communicate, cooperate, collaborate with Rose and I to remove the many challenges and roadblocks to achieve the select board's wishes cannot be overstated. Tom Decker from U.S. Fish and Wildlife worked with the National Shooting Sports Foundation, who generously funded this bronze marker that is here today. I have a connection with Tom through our 4-H shooting sports family. Tom was a leader and wildlife instructor for the 4-H club up in the Kingdom. Commissioner Batchelder and his staff worked tirelessly to develop, arrange, oversee, and facilitate the ceremony we are all gathered here for today. Jackie Casino heads the rail trail system in Vermont, and William Gray, who is here with us today. Raise your hand, William, please. Jackie and Bill arranged to meet with Rose and I and select board members Jessica Van Ort and Tom Collard to listen to us and provide options to achieve exactly what the town had asked for. Their desire to help and do all they could to meet these goals could not have been more accommodating. I have met with William and his assistant Donald twice since at the site. William said he would construct a brand new kiosk at the head of the rail trail with updated signage at the site and also install duplicate restoration marker on the trailhead that he has made at the state sign facility with the digital information that Tom Decker provided him with from the original sign. Bill said he would have it done in time for the ceremony, and Bill and Donald delivered. Thank you. I encourage you to take the very short walk from here to admire the hard work William and Donald have done. We often hear state and federal agencies criticized for their lack of help. I just wanted to let you know that I have reached out to many of them seeking help for those that I represent, and they have always gone above and beyond as the people and the agencies that were involved with this restoration ceremony have done. And I am grateful and appreciative to each and every one of them and the hard work they put forth. Thank you for all you have done for the people of Pawlet. And the guy that I met at U32 who introduced me to his Uncle Steve that night. His name's Bill Gray. He's right over there.
Thank you so much. I can gauge a crowd and how shifty they are and how well they're doing. You look great. I don't have any fear that you're going to be able to make it through 4 more. So if you feel like you need a drink or something, please go for it. But you look great. You're doing great. Next up, we have Tom Decker from the Office of Conservation Aid with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. In case you're wondering, Tom's a Vermonter and a friend to most people in the Fish and Wildlife Department. Don't hesitate to go.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's a privilege to be up here with these dignitaries. I'm happy to be here today. We've heard a lot of stories, a lot of history stories, a lot of personal stories, a lot of community stories. And where my role is in conservation is I work for the federal government that administers funds that in 1937, the President, Roosevelt, signed into law establishing these federal excise taxes that would go to state fish and wildlife agencies to fund restoration projects. And the Turkey Project is one of those. And Vermont began to participate in 1938. And since 1938 till today, those funds come in and are linked to hunter license dollars for conservation purposes. And the department and its warden force and its volunteer community deliver on that at very much a community level. So it's great to be here to look and talk about turkeys. For me, those restoration projects, and I go around the country and see many of them, big game, small game, loons, osprey, peregrine falcons. Some things are hunted, some things will never be hunted. But the conservation of America's birds and mammals has really been affected in what you see in the density, abundance, and distribution of wildlife, and turkeys are a great example of that just across their range. And what they mean to me personally is not the science that goes into it or those other things, it's the community partnership that exists because of those restoration funds. And when I say that, I think of a restoration program like this that would involve the National Wild Turkey Federation. Ultimately, there's a hunting season, and the department has volunteer hunter education coordinators supported by the Vermont 4-H shooting sports. Those people are teaching safe hunting techniques. They're teaching and energizing youth and people who've never hunted before about that potential. And so that volunteerism that comes into play, the engagement with the forest landowners, the ag community, the land, which has been spoken about here, that volunteerism to be willing to say, yes, you can let those things go on my farm. Do you really know what they'll do? Well, maybe, mostly, we think. And it turned out they did very well and they did good. But I think upon reflection, as I think about that community thing, I think about my own family and its relationship in the community. My grandmother was born in Bennington. She was born in the early 1900s. She died in 1963. She never saw a wild turkey in Vermont. She never heard one gobble in the morning in the spring. She never saw one strutting in the field. She never saw them fly up to roost. She never had somebody come back after a hunt and say what an energizing hunt they had. And she never ate a wild turkey. Just didn't exist. And we think about what's going to happen in May this year and what's happened since this restoration program existed and what it means to communities of all type. In my family, my favorite day in May is Mother's Day because my family eats wild turkey on the grill, wrapped in bacon, with fiddleheads and leek potato salad, and that's an exciting day. And food is a very powerful thing in any culture, and you read some of the narrative over here about the number of meals that go into hunting households and non-hunting households and is shared throughout the state. And sharing is a good attribute of the hunting community and an etiquette of good hunters to share for those who aren't quite as skilled, I guess, and need some encouragement of, like, at the end of the day, it's a good meal. But that power of food and the power of partnership and the power of what can happen in Vermont today that my grandmother never was afforded that opportunity or couldn't participate in that is a tribute to the department, the law enforcement unit, the biologists, the volunteers in all those programs, and the landowners. And so I want to really thank the Commissioner for being here today to be part of this. I see a lot of familiar faces who have been part of of Vermont's turkey management program. And so the Fish and Wildlife Service is just very encouraged that, as the commissioner mentioned, sometimes when you're in government, state government, federal government, some of our programs may get critiqued and are not really always seen as the best. But when I see these kind of programs, they actually bring out the best of everyone when we see what it means at the community level throughout Vermont. So thanks for having me today.
When you're done with the Office of Conservation Aid, maybe I can take some public speaking lessons from you. You're very compelling. Ready to hit the hills right now if the Colonel wasn't standing there. Someone I've just met today, John McNamara from the National Shooting Sports Foundation, is going to give us a lesson in funding and all of his background. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. So on the behalf of the National Shooting Sports Foundation's 10,500 members that are the manufacturers, retailers, indoor shooting ranges, and media in the firearm industry, I want to share these words. The firearm and ammunition industry is incredibly proud to support one of the greatest conservation success stories in our nation's history, wildlife restoration. Through the Pittman-Robertson excise tax, more than $31 billion has been returned to the states to fund habitat restoration, public land access, recreational shooting, and hunter ed. Here in Vermont, over $5 million was distributed this year to continue that important work. In today's world, as safe and responsible firearm ownership continues to grow, much of this funding is driven not only by hunters, but increasingly by participants in the shooting sports. Public ranges, youth shooting programs, and a commitment of support for these activities from elected and appointed leaders are all critical to sustaining this funding model. The story of the wild turkey in Vermont is a powerful example of what that commitment makes possible. In 1900, there were about 100,000 wild turkey nationwide, and virtually none in Vermont. Due to habitat loss, unregulated hunting, and the absence of coordinated wildlife management. Through proper funding and the great efforts of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Vermont Fish and Wildlife, the 31 turkeys reintroduced here all those years ago have grown to an estimated 45,000 thriving in the state. It's incredible. That success is a testament to the strong partnerships that Tom talked about. Behind conservation efforts, the state agencies, wildlife professionals, NGO partners, and the firearm and ammunition industry, working together under the American model of wildlife conservation. Most importantly, today's dedication represents a promise to future generations that our wildlife, our landscapes, and our outdoor traditions will endure. The NSSF and its members look forward to continuing to support that promise. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Next up, we have Mr. Brett Ledoux from the Vermont National Wild Turkey Federation, our president. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hi, I'm Brett, and I'm a turkeyholic. Is this the right meeting to be at today? I think so, right? So, honored to be here to speak with all of you on wild turkey in this dedication today. So, by history, I grew up in Norwich, Vermont, and live in Heartland now. When I was a kid, we didn't have wild turkeys that I saw until I was 17, which was 1985. You can all do the math on how old that makes me. But I didn't really think about hunting them until 1997. And my first spring, I ended up missing one, which I'm really good at that. So, and then a little later, I called one in and didn't miss that time. So since then, I've been hooked. And the more I turkey hunt, the more I want to turkey hunt. So. And I didn't start attending NWTF banquets until 1999, and then really got involved as a volunteer around 2005. And I didn't mention it, but I've been the state chapter president since about 2013, and a local chapter president since, well, for almost 20 years. So I've been involved for quite a while. Over the last 50 years, we've been able to partner with Vermont Fish and Wildlife on habitat projects, land purchases, outreach events, and many other projects. These projects have all helped wild turkey, but the work we do also helps other game and non-game species, so that's important to us as well. From my experience, it's been nothing but a positive relationship I only wish I'd gotten involved when I was crawling around, or in the womb even maybe. The history of the restoration intrigues me, which is another reason why I'm honored to be here today. Without the early minds and people dedicated to conservation of wild turkey and restoring them, we wouldn't be here today. So I did want to talk about an NWTF event that we hold every year. It's our volunteers organized a Hall of Fame banquet, and we recognize the people that laid the groundwork at these events. So I'm just going to name a few of the Vermont inductees since we started the induction process. Longtime Vermont turkey biologist Doug Blodgett was one of the first people that we inducted. Good to see Doug here today. NWTF volunteer Ron Lafreniere, Ron Wilcox, who was a longtime state chapter president. We've also recognized Edward Kehoe, longtime commissioner of Vermont Fish and Wildlife, and the person that kind of spearheaded the original restoration program. Stu Bristol is a former game warden and author who helped original releases. Bubby Gamache, who's a volunteer for NWTF. Bart Jacob, Niles Osterley, who are well-known Vermont turkey call makers. They've been inducted. Dale Morris, who was a volunteer. Mark Scott's been inducted. Jeffrey Wallen has been inducted. I get to talk to Jeff a little earlier today, so that was nice to catch up with you. Tim Corey, who was a longtime volunteer. And I'm also proud to announce that this year we'll be inducting Bill Drake. If you know him, don't call and tell him I haven't called him yet. So, I did want to talk a little bit about NWTF too. The NWTF is established in 1973, ironically the same year we started turkey hunting here in Vermont. The NWTF mission, you would think I could be able to say NWTF without tripping over it, but anyway, the mission is to conserve the wild turkey and preserve hunting heritage. Our current regional initiative is called Forest and Flocks, which is a 10-year, 13-state conservation effort, which we launched in 2024, and that was to enhance 100,000 acres in the Northeast, including New England, for wild turkeys and associated species. The initiative prioritizes habitat management, such as creating young forests and supporting mass-producing trees for foraging. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. And again, I talked about who we've inducted into the Hall of Fame so far, and I said all that to acknowledge the partnership again between the Vermont Fish and Wildlife and the Vermont State Chapter, and to honor all those that have played a part in the history of the restoration of the wild turkey. The work we've done together is acknowledged regionally and beyond. I've been fortunate to have worked with all the Vermont biologists, including Doug Blodgett as a volunteer. I also have had the pleasure of working with Amy Alfieri, Forrest Hammond, Chris Bernier, and most recently Tony. All have been easy to work with and a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate their friendship and dedication to preserving the wild turkey too. Looking forward to continued partnership with Vermont Fish and Wildlife and to maintain a sustainable wild turkey population for all Vermonters to enjoy. And again, if anybody who's interested in being an NWTF volunteer, come see me or Chris over in the corner, and I'd love to talk to you about that. So appreciate y'all, and thank you. Thank you for having me here.
This next individual, I've only just met, but I've been working with her for a while over email. She's your vice president of the Pawlet Historical Society, Rose Smith. What a wonderful individual, and how lucky you are to have her steering this on a local level.
Good afternoon. I would like to begin by offering my sincere thanks to a number of individuals and partners whose support helped bring us to this moment. To the Pawlet Select Board members, thank you for inviting me to participate in this effort in my role as president of the Pawlet Historical Society. To Representative Chris Pritchard, thank you for stepping forward so readily to help bring state and federal agencies to the table. I would also like to recognize William Gray, Vermont AOT Rail Trails Senior Technician, and Jackie Casino, Program Manager, for making the trip to West Pawlet on a cold morning in early January to meet with Representative Pritchard, Select Board members Jessica Van Oort and Tom Collard, and myself to thoroughly consider options for locating a marker. William, a special thank you for your innovative idea to replicate the marker. It truly helped move this project forward. And Chris, my thanks again for your continued leadership and support throughout this process. In the late winter of 1969, an important moment took place here in Pawlet, one that was noted at the time in local newspaper accounts, but whose full significance would only become clear in the years that followed. On February 28th of that year, wild turkeys were released into the countryside surrounding this community. For those who have lived here, who have heard the stories passed down over time, this moment has never been just a line in a report. It has become part of the fabric of the community. Like many local stories, the details have taken on a life of their own. Some longtime residents recall hearing that turkeys were released in several locations around the area. Perhaps that is simply how stories evolve as they move from one generation to the next, or perhaps there was a quiet effort to protect those first birds by keeping their exact location uncertain. Whatever the reason, what is endured is not so much the precise location, but the shared sense that something important began here. When I speak with residents, there is a certain pride in that understanding. Not a boastful pride, but a quiet one, the kind that comes from knowing that this small rural place played a part in something much larger than itself. It also invites us to look further back, to imagine 250 years ago, Pawlet's early settlers working this land, clearing fields, building homes, and living closely with the natural world around them. The wild turkey was once a part of that landscape, just as it is again today. Its absence would have been felt over time, even if gradually, and its return, whether noticed at all at once or little by little, marked a kind of restoration, not just of a species, but a familiar presence on the land. Today, the sight of a flock moving across a field or the sound of a gobbler in the spring feels like something that has always been here. But of course it hasn't. It is here because of a deliberate effort, one that happened in part right here in Pawlet. For this community, that legacy is something to take pride in. It reminds us that even small places, often overlooked on a map, can play an important role in shaping the story of a region. And in this case, the restoration of a species across an entire state. More than 50 years later, that quiet moment in 1969 continues to echo through the landscape, through the stories, and through the shared memory of this community. While others will speak more about the history of that restoration and the work that continues today, it is worth pausing to recognize that it all took root in places like this, among communities like Pawlet. And it is and remains a story worth remembering and a legacy worth taking pride in. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Up next, we have Mr. Jeffrey Wallen, Vermont Department of Fish and Wildlife alumni. Hi. We have not met, as you can tell. Please come on up.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I'm truly flattered to have been included in this event, and the turnout is just amazing. I'd really like to thank the organizers, the governor, the secretary, everyone, but I've only been given 5 minutes, so I'm going to keep going. A lot of talk of restoration programs throughout the state, and I got to say, but I'm saying this with no personal experience, that the wild turkey program, I think, I put on the top because they are far more tasty than a peregrine falcon or a loon or a bald eagle. I was the third biologist to take over the program. As you've heard, Bill Drake originated it. They're pretty big shoes to fill before me, Bill bringing the birds over from New York to begin with. Then Joe Artman took over the program. He was here a very short period of time, a little under 2 years, I believe. However, he managed to establish our spring hunting programs. He got the first one off the ground, which was a very restricted area that was open, a very restricted number of permits that were awarded through a lottery system, but it was our first successful wild turkey hunt in the state of Vermont. Joe also was credited with our first in-state trap and transplant, where he captured live trap birds in Pawlet and hauled them across the state for a release in Rockingham, Vermont, which is in Windham County. I did have the privilege of hosting a hunt for Bill Drake in 1976, I believe it was. I convinced the commissioner at that time, Ed Kehoe, to provide him with a complimentary license. And while he was here, I get talking with him and say, gee, Bill, you know, why'd you ever leave the program? He looks at me and says, well, when you walk out through nearly waist-deep snow to release wild turkeys, I was convinced it was a kiss of death. And I thought perhaps I ought to start looking for another job. But the true story is he met a woman out in western New York when he was trapping and moved out there to settle down with her. At any rate, it has been an honor in expanding the program, getting the live trapping and in-state transfers going at a more rapid rate, and initiating fall hunting and expanding our hunting season throughout the state. It's been a privilege, and I thank you once again for involving me in this great event. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lastly, if you can believe it, the person who I alluded to earlier, who was on the hook in case our turkey flock ever goes south, who also has to bear the brunt of the stress of maybe being at the best we've ever been, our Turkey Project leader, Tony Makula.
Thanks. One of the advantages of being the current biologist is I can get a sneak peek at the population trends, and if I get any feeling it's going south, then I'll just know to pass it on to somebody else. Thanks to the diligent efforts of those who came before me, many of whom are here today, Vermont's turkey population has been thriving for 5 decades. The Fish and Wildlife Department strives to maintain turkeys in accordance with what the natural and human environments can sustain. Vermont's turkeys have fallen within this sweet spot for many years. Harvest and reproduction are stable, hunter satisfaction is high, there are few nuisance complaints and few reports of disease. These indicators point to a healthy population that fits well in Vermont's environment. To promote this species and its habitat, the department relies heavily on funds from license sales and the Pittman-Robertson Act, an excise tax on firearms and ammunition. Therefore, traditionally, most of the funds for turkey conservation have come from sportsmen and women. However, there are ways that others can contribute. Nonprofits like the National Wild Turkey Federation contribute toward research, education, and habitat conservation in Vermont and nationwide. Additionally, the department offers the Habitat Stamp, a donation-based program which supports the purchase and subsequent management of lands for wildlife and recreation. Vermont's private landowners are a critical part of the turkey success story. Since 80% of Vermont is privately owned, the department cannot manage this species on public land alone. This department, the U.S. Department of Agriculture through its NRCS program, and the National Wild Turkey Federation provide resources to educate landowners on how to manage property for wildlife, and can even help connect landowners with funding to carry out the work. Private citizens are also critical to the success of Vermont's Turkey Brood Survey, an annual citizen science-based survey of hens and young. By collecting sightings from people all around the state, we are able to keep track of the reproductive success of wild turkeys. The more sightings submitted, the more reliable the data. So this July and August, whenever you see a hen turkey with or without young, You can easily report your sighting on the department's website. Wild turkeys are classified as big game in Vermont, and so are governed by our Big Game Plan, a 10-year plan which outlines the needs and goals for the species. This plan helps to guide the department in making management decisions that promote the enjoyment of turkeys by the public, sustainable hunting opportunities, and assurance that turkeys are in balance with the ecosystem and fulfilling their ecological roles as prey animals, consumers of insects, and spreaders of seeds. Next weekend is Youth Weekend, a dedicated hunting season for youth 15 and under. Youth Weekend provides an opportunity for young people to be introduced to the sport and hopefully gain a lifelong appreciation of these remarkable birds. The month of May marks our spring season, which annually generates millions for Vermont's economy and yields tens of thousands of servings of lean meat for Vermont families. Wild turkeys have a bright future in Vermont. With continued careful planning and management, and most importantly, continued interest and support from the people of Vermont, we can be assured that this part of Vermont's natural heritage is here to stay.
Thank you so much, Tony. So it's my distinct honor and job to wrap this up at some point. And before we unveil the sign, I want to invite the governor up to help me have a little bit of fun. Would you indulge me, sir?
Yeah.
We did not rehearse most of this, and we did not rehearse this part for sure. But I'd also like to call up Rose Smith and Representative Pritchard. I'm not sure which one of these is for whom, Governor, but I mentioned how lucky you are to have these folks managing on a local level, and it occurred to me just a very short while ago that I needed to do something to recognize them, and I wanted to do something that would last. And so, Rose and Chris, I hope that you will accept these tokens of our appreciation on behalf of the state and the department in recognition of your devoted service to the restoration of Vermont's treasured wild turkeys. Aren't they lovely? I hope you find a spot for them in your office or at home. But very proud to know both of you and have your support down here and up in Montpelier too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we roll this out, I did realize that I have other staff here that I forgot to mention. Wardens, please raise your hands. Thank you so much. Joel Llewellyn, raise your hand. Josh Morris, he's taking a picture of me, but he's got to raise his hand. Josh Morris, our PIO. Thank you so much, folks. If there's anyone that I forgot, again, I apologize. That's all the department staff I could see while I was supposed to be paying attention. I would love to unveil this sign now. Maybe Tony and John, Tom, come on up and help us pull this sheet off, and we can stand it up so you all can look at it. I'd love to pass it around so you guys can get some pictures with it. And please don't make this your cue to run away either. We have some snacks, we have drinks, and I encourage you to please walk across the road and see the sign that's going to live in perpetuity on the rail trail thanks to V-Trans. Thank you all so much for being here and representing Vermont and the landowners, the partners that made this all happen. Check that out. That is pretty darn cool. And I'm certainly not going anywhere. If anyone has a great turkey story, I'd love to hear it. Thank you all so much for making the trip, and good luck out there this season if you're a hunter.
I'm Rose Smith from the Pawlet Historical Society, here today to accept a gift from John Hathaway, formerly of Pawlet, of a wild turkey call. And we're happy to have him and the turkey call be a part of the Pawlet Historical Society collection.
Magnum with the size number 9 constant. Yeah.